Now I'd like to take you to a different website called newspapers.com, a very valuable resource that is available free in the family history centers. So as soon as the centers reopen, we encourage each of you to become familiar with this great resource. It's actually the largest online newspaper archive, although there are others that are published on the web. This one I find to be very valuable, and I go to it all the time. They have over 16,000 newspapers, primarily United States based, anywhere from the mid to late 1700s to the present day. So it covers over a couple of centuries. And total, they have almost 600 million newspaper pages published, a very valuable resource. There are two different ways to search this website. One is by paper, and the other is, again, by individual. The first is probably my least favorite because it's not as productive. I will use the second example in a moment to illustrate the success that I can have. But let me click first on papers to illustrate this method. It immediately draws up a listing, a thumbnail listing of all the newspapers. You'll see 15,796 newspapers listed in alphabetical order. I could click on any one of them and go to that particular collection. I can also search in the upper left-hand side by a specific newspaper name. So I'm going to type in the Philadelphia Inquirer, and you'll see it takes me specifically to that newspaper. So if I were to search in this bottom bar for something in the Philadelphia Inquirer, it's only searching in that newspaper base. If I close that or clear that, I can also search by state. So let me click Pennsylvania. It's listed there first, and it brings back a total of 445 papers published in Pennsylvania, again, over that 200 plus year time frame. Again, if I'm looking for a specific paper, this would be the way to go, but I always remember that in many locations over that 250-year period, and there's going to be more than one newspaper published. So for example, in Philadelphia, there's probably more than a dozen newspapers that have been published under different names. And I don't want to have to go back and try to find each newspaper published in Philadelphia or the surrounding areas, Delaware County, Bucks County, et cetera. So I very rarely use the newspaper approach by starting my search with the newspaper itself. So let me show you what I do all the time and find it very fruitful. I'm going to click on the home button, and it takes me back to the home page, which I showed you just a moment ago. I now want to show you the method I use to search for information about ancestors in the United States over the past couple of hundred years. I start by clicking in this search box in the middle of the home screen, typing the full name of the individual I'm looking for, always in quotes. So I'll start with that. And the person I'm looking for is Wilhelm Friedrich Vogt, again in quotes. I won't add any more search criteria in terms of locations or dates at this point. I'll just click search. It'll take a minute and search all of the results in these 16,000 newspapers, and it comes back with no returned matches for someone by that full name. My method is always to start with the full name and then gradually shorten that. So in this case, I'll shorten the middle name to just F. So I'll search for Wilhelm F. Vogt. Again, no return matches for someone by that name anywhere in the United States. So the next thing I want to do is modify his name. I know he lived in Iowa, but I'm not going to narrow it to Iowa because who knows, he may have traveled somewhere else and been published about. But I do know that even though he was born in Germany and named Wilhelm, in the United States, he went by William. So I'm going to just search on William F. Vogt. Again, searching all these newspapers, it comes up with 518 matches. Now, that's too many for me to look through. You'll see that there are results in Pennsylvania, Connecticut, Indiana, Illinois, New York, quite a few. And I don't want to search through that many. So I'm going to find another way to narrow my search. And I will do that by clicking on Show Advanced. And in this case, I'm just going to look in Iowa because I know that he lived there. And it brings a drop down item I can click, and then I'll click search again. No dates yet. And in this case, it brings back the following results. 22. That's a lot better than 518 or 17, whatever it was. Brings back 22 matches. I could look through each of those 22, but just to demonstrate to you what I'm looking for, looks like I needed to try again on a couple of those. I'm going to narrow my search even further. You'll recall that in my place, I can type a country, a state, or a city, and that also includes a county. So in this case, I know he lived in Scott County, Iowa, and so I'll type Scott County, and sure enough, there's a Scott County, Iowa, where there's newspapers published. I'll click on that, no dates yet, and then click search. And in this case, I've narrowed it now down to William F. Vogt, Scott County, Iowa, and it brought me 10 matches. This is exactly what I'm looking for because now I can specifically look at each of these. I first want to take advantage of this sort feature, which is up in the upper right-hand corner. It typically sorts in the best match. If I click on that down arrow, I find that it's most helpful for me if I use the paper date, the oldest first. This then lists the articles, the returns in chronological order. And you know, it was interesting as I looked through each of these, this very first one in 1903 is the obituary of William's mother. As I scroll down to 27, it's the obituary of his wife. I scroll a little further in 1932, the obituary of his sister. And then down here at the bottom in 1939, it's William's own obituary. So within these 10 searches, as I narrowed it down, I found some very rich information. Today, I want to show you how I actually clip these articles in order to post them on Family Search. I want to go to the example of the obituary of his wife. This first one, January 23rd, 1927. If I click on that thumbnail, it brings me to the newspaper page that's been scanned, and you'll see his name, which I searched for, William F. Vogt, is highlighted in this obituary. And as we read it, we learn that it's for his wife. I like to remove the yellow highlight because it often gets in the way of reading the actual letters. So the way I do that is I go up to the upper right and I click on this cancel button, and then you'll see that it removed the yellow highlight and I can clip it without that distraction. The other thing that I can do is take advantage of this toolbar on the right. If the print is by chance too small or too large, I can increase the size or I can decrease the size. If it was particularly a bad scan, I can even invert the colors so the background will be black and the print will be white. I don't use that very often, but sometimes that can be helpful to individuals. Now I want to be able to clip this obituary so that I can add it to Mrs. Vogt's page in Family Search. Let me show you the way I would do that, a preferred method. One option, which I do not prefer actually, is this clip feature in the upper right on the newspaper.com website. If I use that clip feature, it allows me to clip the specific article and not the whole page. But when it saves the clip, it does so with a trade or a copyright marker at the bottom for newspapers.com. And because Family Search will not publish any copyrighted material, they will not accept me uploading any document that's been clipped with this feature in newspapers.com. So I avoid that. Just thought I would call that out to you. So how do I clip it? Let me show you my method. What I do is on my computer, I use my clip feature. I'm working on a Mac, but if you happen to be working on a PC, you could use a snippet feature or something like that. But what I do is I click the correct keys on my Mac and it draws up my identifier here. And then I'm able to draw a box. You can see a gray box going around this article. Once I release my mouse, then it clips, you'll see down in the bottom right-hand corner, a JPEG file of that obituary, and it saves it on my desktop. Now, I want to be able to put this JPEG file in a document so that I can upload that to her family search page. And the way I do that is I open a Word document, and at the very top, I type in bold what it is I'm going to be clipping and inserting. And in this case, it's the obituary of Wilhelmina Brockman. That's Mrs. Wilhelm Frederick Vogt. And then what I like to do is right below that is type the source information, the citation of the paper I'm getting that from, and you'll see that in the upper left hand in red print. So I type published in the Quad City Times, Davenport, Iowa, 23 January 1927, a Sunday, page 15. Then I'll space down a couple of lines. And now at this point, I go over to the right on my desktop and actually click and drag that article right underneath that type. And you'll see it now inserts it with my cursor down to the right. And then I'll return a couple of times. I'm going to just minimize this window for a second because I want to show you a particular feature. I've now clipped this obituary, and I'm going to go back to my search results, and you'll see right below this one is an obituary published Monday, January 24th, the very next day, but in a different newspaper. So I'm going to click on that, and I will find this obituary again for Mrs. Vogt. The next day, it's a different paper, and I want to make sure I clip that and include that in this Word document. I try to collect or group together articles that have to do with the same event in a person's life. I'll click cancel again to get rid of the yellow highlight. I will use my clipping feature from my keyboard. I will surround the article that I'm wanting to clip, let go of my mouse, and then it clips it down to the right and adds that document to my desktop. The one thing I want to just point out here is there are often occasions when an obituary or an article about someone will basically spread to 2 columns, sometimes even 3 or 4, depending on the placement on the page. Make sure you look for the whole content of the article, and it may require you to do 2 or 3 or 4 clippings of the various portions. Or if by chance it takes up a whole column, then you may want to clip in sections, 2 or 3, 4 sections, and then save them to your desktop as I have done here. Then you can include them together in your Word document as one. So now that I've clipped that, I want to return to my Word document and now indicate that another obituary was published in a different newspaper. So right below that first article, I'm going to now say published in the Daily Times, Davenport, Iowa, on the 24th of January 1927. That's a Monday, page 6. Space down a couple of lines, and now I'll do the same as I did before. I will click and drag that clipping right below. Now you'll see it dropped it to another page because of its size. I think they're probably small enough that I can fit this on one page, and so what I will do is click this article, grab the bottom right-hand corner, and shrink that to about 3 inches. You can see my ruler above. And then I'll do the same with this one at the top. And now you can see I have both obituaries on the same page. I try to size the print in the article, the clip article, with the size of text that I'm using, that I'm actually typing, and then I know that it'll be readable. So now I've collected 2 obituaries from 2 different newspapers, put it in a Word document, and now I want to save this as a PDF. The reason is Family Search will not accept a DOC formatted document in Memories, but they will accept a PDF. So the way I do that is I go up to my toolbar and click File, Save As. I'll give it a name, Obituary, Wilhelmina Brockman, 1927. I will save that to my desktop and save it as a PDF, and then click Export. Now you'll see it was added to my desktop up here in the upper right, and now I can close, and actually don't need to save this Word document format because I have it now as a PDF. I'm now going to return to my search results, and again just remind you that within these 10 search results I found 4 different obituaries, and very rich finding in that process. I'm now going to return to Wilhelmina Brockman's page, and I would like to post this document, which we have recently clipped from newspapers, to her Memories tab. So I'll click on Memories and then Upload Document. It now asks me to select the document I want, which is the obituary here, and I'll click Open. It'll spin, of course, for a second, indicate unprocessed. I'm going to go ahead and start my titling and tagging process. I'll first click on Add Title, and this is the obituary for Wilhelmina Brockman in 1927, and I'll click Save. You'll be reminded that since this is a PDF document, it's already been attached to Wilhelmina, and then it says who else is in this memory, and it references by name her husband, as well as her 3 brothers, John, Henry, and Emil Brockman. They're referenced in both of these documents, and so I want to add their names in so that this memory will be attached to them as well. First, I'll add her husband, Wilhelm Frederick, and there he goes, popped up there. I'll click on his name. He is added in blue. Then I'll add the brothers. I happen to have looked at her person page ahead of this, and her oldest brother's given name is Johannes instead of John Brockman. Now it doesn't immediately come up with a find for him, so I'll click Add New. And then he shows at the bottom with this attached to family tree. Knowing that this may happen, I already made note of what his identifier number is. So if I click on Attach to Tree, it asks me for his person ID number. I will now type that in here, KFY9X7M, and click Select. It then finds the correct Johannes Brockman, and I click Attach, and now he shows as blue. I'll do this for the 2 other brothers. Henry is actually known as, given name as Heinrich. Brockman, oops, misspelled Heinrich. Brockman, again, it doesn't find him right away, so it asks for his number, which I've written down, L44K39P. Wait for it to catch up with me there, and I will click Select and then Attach. So I have 1 brother to go. His name is Emil Brockman. And it does find him. That's terrific. That matches the number I wrote down. So if I click on Emil, it now adds him to this list. So I've now properly added each of these individuals mentioned in this memory, and so it will be attached to each of these pages. Just to demonstrate that, I'll go back to Wilhelmina's page by clicking on her name in the upper left. And if I scroll down and look at her family members, her husband Wilhelm on the left and her siblings on the right, I'll just click on Emil Brockman's page, and I'll click Person and go to his Memories page. And sure enough, there's the obituary that I just posted for his sister. That concludes our demonstration today about adding documents, whether they're PDF documents or JPEG documents, to a person's page in Memories. We hope you found it instructive. Again, newspapers.com, a great resource, place to find all sorts of information, interesting information about your ancestors. It's not just obituaries. They could be wedding announcements. They could be photographs. They could be articles about their involvement in the community. It could be about a reunion, or even you'll find some funny stories they used to publish in the old newspapers. So we hope you enjoy searching for those articles that document your family in the past and then sharing them through familysearch.org. Thanks again for joining us. We hope to see you next week. Bye bye.